exercise once upon a time. There we go. As an exercise once upon a time, I felt like the Lord wanted me to start thinking about what it is that I actually had control over. And along with that, what it is that I actually own. And I owe money on my house. See, I don't own that. But I don't owe any money on any of our cars, which are now old. So, of course, I don't owe any money on them. But am I going to be able to keep them? The answer is long term, no. I had a guy way back, right after we were married, right before we got married, an older guy whom I respected. And he had a local Saab dealership in State College. And he told me stories about the Saabs that he had had. And so I thought God's solution for me was that I was going to get a brand new one, which at that time was about a $10,000 car, which was really expensive for the early 70s. Mm-hmm. Just saying. But that car was going to last me my lifetime. It just doesn't work that way. They wear out, they break. Pennsylvania, back then, they rusted out. I guess some places they still do. And so I'm not going to be able to keep my cars. How well do I control my house? Well, I've got squirrels I can't get rid of. I've got plumbing leaks that I can't get fixed. I'm on my way with both of those projects. There's a zillion projects going on. So just with my house, I have this going on all the time. If you have a house, you know what that's like. It's just always something, right? Got my real estate tax bill. They expect me to come up. Now, we live in Wagner County, so it's not as bad as when you come over here. But we got a tax bill for almost $1,400, and they want half of it this month.
Gosh, I think we could be that high. We lived in Wagner County too for a while.
Yeah, well, it's almost $1,400 a year on the Plex. If I don't pay that, I lose my house. So do I really own it? Well, not really. I'm also not able to control it. Thank you for that reminder, brother. Because it always needs to be fixed. So then I thought about things closer in. You know, my sphere is getting smaller. And I thought, well, I own my body. Well, I don't, because sometime somebody is going to take that away or something. So what I really have is kind of a small space that I have partial control over between my ears. And that's all I really have. And I was set back by that. I was set back by that. So we are finite. Not very much that we own or control. There is yet within us, though, this thing that says we should live forever. Our spouses, our family, those close to us, should live forever. Do they? The answer is no, they don't. My wife has a doctor she really likes, but I think he's like 87 years old. And he recently had a quadruple bypass. Even doctors don't live forever. That was a shock when I realized that even doctors don't live forever. Okay, so we're finite, we're fallen, we're finite. The third F is that we falter. Elijah up on Mount Carmel hasn't rained for 3.5 years. The 450 prophets of Baal can't produce anything. He makes fun of them. Then calls the nation to himself, puts together a rough altar. How long will you halt between two opinions? There are times when that has gone straight through me. Does that? How long am I going to wait for? When will I ever get to a place where I can make a real commitment to this journey? To this journey, to following Jesus to the end. I don't know if I've got there yet. I probably won't know till the test comes. By the way, your spiritual enemy gives you a test so that you will fail. This is important information. Your spiritual enemy will give you a test so that you fail. Your Father will give you a test so that you will pass. But here's the thing, they look like the same test. It's impossible to tell which kind of test it is, or even if it's both kinds at the same time. Yes, you can pass the test. No, you cannot easily pass the test necessarily. There is a difference. Our culture and time, we're addicted to easy. Big, easy, fast, and cheap. I shared one time, one of the movie producers, I don't know if it was Jack Warner or which one it was, he had a sign in his office. The sign said, big, fast, cheap. Pick two. If you want it to be big and fast, it was not going to be cheap. If you wanted it to be fast and cheap, it was not going to be big or good. I think it was good, fast, and cheap. It wasn't going to be good. Pick two. We don't like that. We don't like that. So here we are, and Scripture says God has given us everything we need in the Bible that pertains to life and godliness, and we still struggle. You know, is he going to be enough? Is there going to be enough? How will I make it? Well, all of that, you know, goes back to our fallen selfishness. And nobody is here from last week. Alan is online. Alan, do you remember what the fourth F was?
Did you mention faulty?
I mentioned faltering.
Faltering. I think
Yeah.
something, it was like we're faulty, we are imperfect or something like that.
Fallible?
Fallible?
That would have to do with fallen, I think.
Okay.
Okay, there was a fourth F, and I can't remember what it was. So here we are. Now, one of the things that I would like to do, and I think probably that's a direction we ought to go in, is I would like to open the scriptures tonight and start to just dig into how did we get here in the first place? Because there's a lot of stuff in Genesis that we never ever really have taught through and worked through. And so I think I would like to do that. So if you could bring up Genesis chapter 1. And we'll kind of run on this track for a little ways. Incidentally, I will not be here next week. Earth to Alan. So I'm going to need somebody to pinch hit. Alan is my co-leader. He's joining us by Zoom, as you know.
I can do that.
Okay, Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, let me stop there a minute and talk about some historical background. This was written about 1500 BC. Now, in 1500 BC, the dominant creation story that everybody believed in that region of the earth came from Babylon. So what everybody believed, the creation story that they were told, was that there was a female goddess and two male husband gods. And between the three of them, they had a bunch of kids, which are also gods, of course. And the kids were starting to get rowdy and grow up and be teenager gods. And so the three parent gods decided that what they were going to do was kill them. And somehow the mother god was the one that was delegated to do this. And the children chose one of their brothers named Marduk as the champion to go into battle with the mother. Well, the mother god was a god of water. And so they went into battle, and she opened her mouth to flood him and destroy him and all the others. And he cut her in half right in that instance. So half of the water went under the earth, and half of the water went up in the sky. And that's how we got a situation where water would sometimes come down from the sky, but if you dig in the ground, lo and behold, there's water down there too. And that was the story that they had. Okay? God gave us something very, very different. Now, when people talk about Genesis 1, skeptically, there's some things that we have to understand. First thing is, this is not a science book, nor is it a history book. It does have science and history, and it is trustworthy. Neither is it a book designed to answer our questions. What it is a book designed to tell us what we need to know. Sometimes that answers our questions. Sometimes it leaves some of the questions kind of vague. It just doesn't deal with that. So apparently we don't need to know all the details about that. So it's not about satisfying your curiosity. So the Genesis 1 story begins, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And what I saw in this felt like the Lord arrested me. If you see the word beginning, that's time. Heavens refers to space. And the earth refers to matter and energy.
Sure enough.
And he does it in that order.
So in
And that
the beginning refers to time.
time. So he created time. Space had to have a time to exist in, so he created time first, then he created space, then he created matter and energy because they require both time and space to exist in. Oh my gosh. If that doesn't sound like modern cosmology, I don't know what does. This is 1500 BC this is coming from.
Einstein figured out that time is creation.
Yeah, well,
Or actually mathematically quantified it.
so at the beginning of this book, here's this big surprise that's right there in plain view. Now watch how this goes a little bit. And the earth was formless and void, or a waste and emptiness. The word void has to do with chaos. darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Now let's look at this a minute. Formless, chaotic, and dark. And here comes the Spirit of God. So somehow, one of the things I think he's saying here is that the Holy Spirit is attracted to formless, chaotic, dark.
Yeah, it is.
If you look at the way he's handling this situation in verse 2, he is acting like he cares about it and loves it. Now, he's not going to leave it that way, but he is drawn to that. So when my soul is empty and chaotic and dark, guess who is going to show up for me? Now we are in this time, we have this plague, then we have the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and then we have the whole election thing, which is still not settled more than a month later. And our own lives have something of this empty, chaotic, and our world certainly does. And the Holy Spirit, I am sure, is drawn to all that and wants to move on that. Go ahead.
It was given to teach us and lead us into all truth. And the way out of this, the scripture says, truth to make us free from all the chaos and the dark and the calmness.
That's right.
But forgive me, can I back up from there? I was thinking about the three gods. Years ago, and forgive me, my memory is not what it was, and I've forgotten a lot of this stuff I studied. Oh goodness, it's been over 20 years ago now. But I studied an organization called the Golden Dawn. It was on Wikipedia. And they have, they study what they call the trio life. But the way this thing starts in their terminology, the way they see things, is there are these three things. Before, when everything was formless and there was nothing there, it says first there was Ein, then there was Ein Sof,
Time.
and then, no, Ein, A-I-N, Ein.
Okay.
That's their word, Ein. They said there was Ein, then there was Ein Sof, dash S-O-P-H, Ein Sof, and then there was Ein Sof dash U-R. And I'm saying this because of the idea of the three that you mentioned. And somehow in the, whatever it was, these three came together. And out of them came the beginning that you were talking about. And I don't remember how to relate it to you, but just because that makes me think that even in the uttermost idiocy of lies, there's some basis in truth that permeates all of it somewhere. There's some unity there because we can only do so much with our minds. But anyway, let me stop. It's just, you got my brain working now.
Yeah,
I have
well,
to get studying again now.
the hardest thing is to get people to think. And so, okay, now, following this are 6 days of creation. This is so beautiful. It was formless and empty or chaotic. So for 3 days, he formed, and then for 3 days, he filled. And we're going to watch this unfold here in the 6 days of creation. So he has a 2-verse introduction. Then he has this beautiful symmetrical 6 days of creation. And then at the bottom, he has a conclusion, a day of rest. And this is as I said, not a science textbook, but it is a literary work. And so we have to interpret it as a literary work, which he has arranged in a symmetrical form. So watch how he does this. So verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. So when God created light, he created all of the wave motion things that go on throughout our universe. And there are just scads and scads and scads of them. Goes all the way from gamma rays and cosmic rays to things that'll go straight through the earth without stopping. From there, all the way, the Navy has something called extremely low frequency radio ELF. And it takes a long time to transmit one letter of the alphabet. It is such a long frequency. But the thing about it is they can communicate with submarines under thousands of feet of water with that thing. The submarines can't communicate back, I guess because they don't have an antenna that long or something, but at least it gets them their attention, something that they might need to know, or they might need to come up to a depth where they can communicate. So, and these things have a whole range of energy. So, practical. Y'all are old enough to remember folding nylon webbed lawn chairs, right?
Good old days.
And you're old enough to remember that after a while, those things look perfectly fine, but when you sat in them, they would collapse. The webbing would go away. That's because nylon is a polymer, so there are thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of identical units linked together in this great big long molecule. But the energy of the bond between these building blocks, the mortar in the concrete block wall, okay, is the same energy as ultraviolet light.
Interesting.
So the ultraviolet light from the sunlight, ping, a photon hits that in the wrong thing, and it just uncouples like a train. And you get enough of those things uncoupling throughout all the nylon webbing, and it looks like it's just fine. Might be a little faded or something, or a little dirty or something, but it looks just fine. but it's
That's
all
why, it's-
So
shredded.
when we say it's rotted, it actually just
It has decoupled.
degenerated.
It's like a train, it's like a train where somebody came along and decoupled the cars from each other, and it still looks like a perfectly fine train.
that's why synthetics deteriorate.
Excuse me?
I say that's why synthetics deteriorate.
Well, some synthetics do. Now, polyester, the bond that connects polyester together is at a different energy. So polyester is largely unaffected by sunlight. So when I was doing upholstery, I learned all this stuff. So whenever I came to a project that was going to be outside,
you probably have
I used polyester thread. But polyester thread is just a little more expensive than nylon thread. So guess what the boat manufacturers use?
nylon.
And I hate to talk about this, but the beautiful boats I saw, that the seats were falling apart because the seams failed because the top thread was nylon. That's what was exposed to the sunlight. And it just went blink, 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 and it was coming apart. And they didn't use, there's foam that water will run through instead of laying in there. That's a little more expensive. Treated plywood is a little more expensive. So I would have this beautiful boat that was only a couple of years old, and the seat had come apart like this, and it was all rotten and mildewed and nasty inside. And so when I rebuilt them, they got rebuilt with integrity. The staples were all rusted out, so I used stainless steel staples. You know, more expensive materials a little bit, but my stuff would last. So God created all of that when he said, let there be light. See, there's depths that we now understand here that we didn't understand before. Verse 4, God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening and there was morning, one day.
So then, does that mean that all these different spectrums of light you're talking about come from the sun?
I'm sorry?
Does that mean then that all the different spectrums of light you're talking about come from the sun? Since it's the original light, or just light is just there without the sun?
Well, we don't get to that part yet.
Okay, I'm sorry, forgive me.
It's all right.
Right.
Well, that's all right. Watch the
I didn't
story
realize that.
unfold here. Then God said, let there be an expanse in the middle of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. You have water above and water below. And God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which are above the expanse, and it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Then God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Now, he is the whole time forming. So the first thing he does is he creates the whole idea of wave motion, light and sound and all of that whole thing. And somewhere the earth became a rotating solid body so that there was day and night. That's the first day. The second day, he separates the heavens from everything under the heavens. So there's kind of a coalescing in an outcasting to create what's up there and what's down here. The third day, he separates what's down here into seas and dry land. So he's forming. Go ahead, Don.
No, I'm sorry, 'cause you got me hungry now, my brain is turning, and I got all these questions that are forming in my mind.
Now, when you're reading the Bible, look for things that do not fit,
Yes.
because things that do not fit are indicators sometimes of stuff that's important.
Yes.
Verse 11 is one of those. We're still in day 3, so God is supposed to be forming, right? What does he do in verse 11? Then God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit after their kind, with seed in them on the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation. Verse 11, you see that after their kind, that's genetics. If you plant a tomato seed, you will get a tomato plant. If it grows to maturity, it will have ripe tomatoes, and inside the ripe tomatoes are a whole bunch of tomato seeds, and the cycle repeats itself. It doesn't produce an oak tree.
Or a banana.
Yeah. So verse 12, and the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in them after their kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning, a third day. All right, now here's the anomaly. I read this passage for decades and never saw this. Here's the anomaly. We're still in the first 3 days, right? So he is supposed to be forming, and so he creates light and so on, and then darkness and light, and then he separates the heavens from what's underneath the heavens, and then he separates seas and dry lands and all. And then all at once, here's vegetation. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's day 3. He is spilling over from day 4 into day 3. To me, now this is just me, but I try to understand this person. And one of the things that comes out to me from those couple of verses is this. He will take from what is coming and sometimes put some of it into where it doesn't belong quite yet. So in Hebrews 6, he talks about those who have tasted of the powers of the age to come. In other words, in our time, sometimes apparently the Holy Spirit will jump a gear and drop stuff into our time, into our experience that isn't supposed to be there quite yet. So what this says to me about the God that we serve is that he leans forward in anticipation into what he's doing. And that is a wonderful thing. He is leaning forward in anticipation.
Yeah, so he's, I don't want to get into empathy more for here, but he is anxious for us to grow up. Like we are with our own children. We can't wait to see them walk, and we can't wait to hear them talk. So we do things to try to encourage that as that.
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Now we're going to see some of this again in chapter 2. But I want you to see that anomaly. When there's something that works different than everything else, that starts to me to, in between the lines, say something important about how God is. Now I understand none of that's in the text. All the text says is, well, day 3 started creating plants. But the plants don't fit in day 3. They should be off in day 4 or someplace. All right. Let me get off my soapbox. I love this
I
stuff.
love it. You can stay there for me.
Okay, now, day 4, God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And so God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He made the stars also. So day 1, he created light. Day 4, he created luminary bodies that gave out light, or reflected light in the case of the moon. So there's now a correspondence between day 1 and day 4. You see what I'm saying? So he formed the whole idea of the possibility of light in day 1. Now in day 4, he's filling that form with something that does that. Apollo 11 was the one that landed on the moon. That was in July of '69. But they had one that went around the moon, kind of looped around the moon and came back
13.
Right at the end of 1968. And I don't know if it was Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. These astronauts were in space, and they aimed their little handheld camera that they had back at the Earth, and then they read all of Genesis 1. Live on television while they were showing the Earth, which at that point was gradually getting smaller and smaller because they were going away. And I was not a believer at that point, but it impacted me. And I began to see that if Genesis was written from an earth-centered standpoint, in other words, from the viewpoint of someone who is standing on the earth like us, watching all of this happen, it very well may be that there will be light and darkness a long time before you could make out a sun and moon and stars.
Well, scripture says, each one, I'm gonna get this right. God's day is as 1,000 years to us. So we look at 6,000 years left in the creation story. From what you're saying, same perspective.
Well, I'm just saying that if this was written for an ordinary guy standing on the ground, looking around, looking up and so on, this is what it would have looked like for him to have been there and watched all this transpire. I am not saying that each of these days was 1,000 years. Personally, I am a young earth creationist. That means that I believe that this all happened comparatively recently, and that a lot of things that are explained in the fossil record and so on can be explained other ways. I don't want to get off into any of that now. But there are indicators that some of this stuff that was thought to be millions and millions of years ago was not. And so just to titillate you with one small thing, the moon is gradually spiraling away from the earth. Not very fast, not so anybody's going to notice any difference for a long, long time. But if you back that up over the course of millions of years, the moon is close enough so that the tidal forces would wreck the crust.
Whoa.
And there would be
That's interesting.
unbelievable tides from the ocean.
Right.
And yeah, so the fact that we now know that the moon is moving away from the earth means that it could not have been there real far back in the past, because life itself wouldn't have been possible. Just, you know, and it's little things like that that all right.
Aren't you glad you came? I am elated that I came.
Okay,
We'll never get through it.
Verse
This one will never
19.
look the same again.
No.
and there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. Verse 20, and then God said, let the waters teem with the swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens. And God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply upon the earth. And it was evening, and there was morning, a fifth day. So day 2, he separated what was up there from what was down here. Day 5, he fills what was up there and what was down here. And since what was down here in day 2 was pretty much water, he's filling what's down here in day 5 with fish and all of that kind of thing. So then God said, verse 24, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts after their kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good. So, verses 24 and 25, day 3, he separates seas from dry lands. He's already put stuff in the seas. So now he begins to fill the dry lands. And then he says in verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Now all through this, it's after their kind, after their kind. Now he says, after my kind. Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over the cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, including the snake. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over everything, every living thing that moves on the earth. So there is in us this down deep belief that all this stuff is supposed to obey us. The car is supposed to work. My paycheck is supposed to cover all of the bills. The bugs are supposed to stay outside, and so are the squirrels. Okay? This thing is supposed to obey me. And every one of you feels that. And every one of us lives in a state of constant frustration because none of it does. Or if it does, it's only with a lot of difficulty. I have fought whole wars over nuts that wouldn't come loose and bolts that broke off. Seriously. You get a bolt that breaks off in the wrong place and you're into a siege.
Really?
I used to have a Buick Regal and the starter motor went out in it. It took me 3 days laying out on my driveway in the cold. It was December and it was cold to change that blasted starter motor. And I'm calling on the Lord for 3 days straight. And the Lord would only give me one word: persist. And so I persisted. And I changed the starter motor. And maybe I'm a better man because of that.
Well, he talked about dominion. He didn't say it was going to be easy.
I'm sorry?
When he told us to have dominion, he didn't say it was gonna be easy.
Good point.
Well, yeah. But we haven't got to chapter 3 in the story yet. I'm just saying that
Yes, chapter 3.
I'm just saying that the image of God and what God gave us was that we were supposed to have dominion, which we now do not have. Now, coming out of that, this is heresy according to John. And one of the things I said early, and most of you guys weren't here, I said, take this stuff loosely, okay? I'm giving you the best to understand right now. Heresy according to John is that every man, every individual who has a Y chromosome struggles with pride because we were supposed to have dominion. We gave it up. We are now fallen in the process of being redeemed. But we don't have dominion like we did then, but we're supposed to, and we know that we're supposed to. And so what we do is, in our pride, we try to assert dominion where we don't have it. And I believe that that then becomes the central struggle that every man faces. And that when we start to talk about man stuff, that pride thing is front and center, right in the middle as the stronghold that something has to happen to them. And we'll get to that. But I believe that we were set up for that when God made us in his image and said, let them have dominion.
It's kind of akin to taxes. I learned when I was about 40 years old that if you never start paying taxes, you never have to. We give that dominion to the government when we take that first tax out, we sign that first W-2. If we never sign the first W-2, then we never owe taxes, and they can't legally force us to. So we lose our dominion in the garden. He gave us the dominion, then we turned around and lost it. Now we're struggling to get it back.
Okay.
We signed the W-2 in the Garden of Eden. So.
Yeah, well, I don't know how that all works, but verse 29, then God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, it shall be food for you. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth, which has life, I have given every green plant for food, and it was so. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So day 3, he separates the land and the seas. Day 6, he fills the land. He already filled the seas in day 5. Chapter 2, verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. And by the 7th day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. See, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made earth and heaven. Now, I went clear down to verse 4 for two reasons. Number one, we had a kind of a preamble, verses 1 and 2. Then we have 3 days of forming, 3 days of filling, and then the first 3 verses in chapter 2 are the conclusion to kind of tie this all together so that this makes a beautiful symmetric story, which was a huge contrast to this thing the Babylonians were believing. Huge contrast, radically different. The other thing is, in verse 4, New American Standard says this is the account of the heavens and the earth. When I read it, I said, these are the generations. The reason is, that's the Hebrew phrase. These are the generations. So King James puts it that way. And it sounds kind of old-fashioned. The writer of Genesis uses that phrase as a chapter division. There are something like 11 divisions in Genesis, and he uses that same phrase to mark one division to another division. So this is the end of the first division, so he uses that phrase. Okay? All right, thoughts, comments? Am I boring you guys, or is this?
You're not boring me at all.
Quite interesting.
And we don't have our box. One of the things that we started to do is that, have you ever heard the phrase 3 yards and a cloud of dust in football? Okay, well, there's a style of playing football, which is bang heads. And the way football is, if you can gain 3 yards on a down average, you win the game. Because at the end of 4 downs, you've gained 12 yards and you've gotten yourself another set of 4 downs. And that's all you got to do. So 3 yards is basically a person's body length plus a half. And I don't know how many steps it is for those big guys, but it isn't very many steps. And that's all you got to do as an offense. And of course, as a defense, you got to keep them from being able to do that. So there's the contest. So I've gone to churches where they had 3 services, and so I was there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and every one of those services come down to the altar and make this decision too, and varying kinds of things. And after some time and some distance, I started to get some perspective on that. And what I was being asked to do was make 156 important decisions every year. And how many important decisions can I really make in a year's time? But that was their style of preaching. So instead of giving up, however, as I started to process this group and what we maybe could try to do, I hit on this idea of 3 yards. Small goals that we work on. And we have a box and we have file cards, and the guy with the box wasn't here tonight. Don't know where he is, but he didn't make it. So we don't have the file cards or the box.
We actually got together, Benjamin and I, on Saturday, and had a good little time together. He had the box with him.
Yeah, he brought it last week.
Yeah, I asked him if I was willing to take it, but he's okay to keep it. But I hadn't talked to him since.
Okay, well,
John, I've got the box.
you have the box, Alan?
You gave it to me and I have it right in front of me.
Oh my, and you're not here.
No, I'm not. Well, I'm there in a Zoom kind of way.
Okay. So, we had cards. Do you have your card? Doug, do you have your card?
Sit in the truck.
Okay. And Alan has the box, so he's gonna have his card anyway. So, who wants to go first? We review week by week. How did you do on that last down?
I'll go ahead. I had a couple of opportunities, probably had more, I should say.
Well, what did you have written on your card?
I just aim to recognize, or come to a greater recognition of my authority in Christ for my own flesh in every thought. My goal was I took what you said, because that's a 3-yarder, to share Jesus in some capacity with someone this week. And I did have an opportunity to pray for a friend of mine who manages a company in Oklahoma City that I was working with last week, who is the daughter of a good friend of mine in Manhattan, Kansas, who owns a tree service there. It's been in business for 51 years now. He and his daughter are both, or his daughter particularly, good friends with Linda and me. And she's asthmatic, and it really bothers her. So I just prayed for her. And
Okay. Attaboy. Attaboy. Do you remember what was on your card, Joe?
Yeah, do something during the week that would encourage people to see Jesus in me in some way.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe Saturday.
Yeah, I was about to say, he batted 1,000. I'm his witness. Yeah, he batted 1,000.
Just trying to deal with the young lady with the furniture and the people that were involved in us finding that there was furniture available, going to their home, and then the guy that had the furniture has been having some issues. So I just shared with him a little bit while we were there.
all right.
So I tried to encourage him. He lost his mother. It's been very disheartening to him. She struggled with that. So I related to him what's been going on in my life in that area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow.
Mhm.
That's great. That's great. Attaboy. Alan, what did you write on your card?
On my card, I said that I was going to find a better way to spend my evenings. So I should find something to study, something biblical, and I did find something. It's a little pamphlet by a seminary professor named David Allen Black, and he's going through the book of Hebrews. So I'm going to take that and follow his study.
Wow, great,
Yeah.
great. So we have, as a team, some momentum going here. Now, when we started 2 weeks ago, we talked about the sick, the weak, the brokenhearted, the disconnected, and the lost. That's out of Ezekiel 34:4 as descriptions of all these people around us whom the Lord loves. And so I chose for my 3 yards, I want to be increasingly aware of the brokenhearted around me. And I didn't do so well that first week. So when you don't do so well on your 3 yards, what do? Well, you have a second down now, and you get to try this again. And so last week, I got to try this again. And this week, I did better at being aware of the brokenhearted around me. Now, we don't have the box, and so we don't have the cards, except you have yours in your truck, and you have yours on your lap, and I've got mine right here. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about what your 3 yards, what you would like for your 3 yards this coming week. And what we're talking about is something small, measurable, attainable. Maybe something out of what we talked tonight about out of Genesis.
I think my 3 yards will be to find a way to go back and read this Babylonian account that you talked about. I would very much like to understand that and be able to digest it.
Okay. All right. But get Google out and start doing some research.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want a 5-page paper double-spaced next week.
Oh. Oh.
Spell checked. Giving you a hard time, I'm sure.
Yeah, proper.
Oh, I won't be here next week. You get a reprieve.
Oh, okay.
Plus, Alan wants to hold your feet to the fire.
I know what I'm gonna do 2 weeks. Oh, gosh.
Sounds encouraging.
I have a young lady that works with me, she and her boyfriend They're contractors, but they're my crew, even though they're not technically employees. And I just learned from her a couple of days ago. I knew that her parents were divorced. Her dad is a customer, and but we were able to get into a conversation where I could find out it was just more comfortable for me to ask her how old she was when they divorced. She was 7. So I know that there are, since then, she's had to work, both parents, she has a good relationship. They both love her. She knows they love her. It's not that at all. But the fact that it is a divorce situation, no doubt has put her through some things that she normally wouldn't have had to go through. And so this will be 2 weeks from now. I've already made this decision with Linda, my wife. We're going to have them over for dinner or for breakfast rather. I need to show them how to clean saws and so forth. But it'd be a good time to do that. But her finals week is this week, so that's not going to happen while she's in it's her 2nd year at OSU. But for this week, I'd like to pick it up again from where I left off with last week's little game and recognize a sick person, someone who's physically sick, and just step into their life for a moment and minister healing to them. Pray healing into their life. I got 3 yards the last time. I'll just stick with the same play.
Okay. I
brought everything but my pen, John. I don't know if you can spare that there. Yeah, thanks, Joe. It would have been awesome if I caught both simultaneously.
You have to have eyes like a chameleon.
I was while you were doing that sounds like a great thing. I was writing because I was thinking about what I wanted to do. I am fascinated by this anomaly in day 3, where he jumps the gun and starts filling things a day early. And so I want to pray into God about that and start investigating before the Lord how that affects me and whether there's a relational pathway with him into seeing that happen more often. And I just introduced a phrase there, relational pathway. Everything that we do with God is based on a relationship. That's the backbone. That's the framework of that we operate in. So I'm going to do that. Do you have any thoughts on what you might want to do, Greg?
I would just like to be more present to the Lord. Just find myself easily distracted or sometimes going through a period of the day where, gosh, I've been working on this for several hours and haven't really looked heartily for his direction. I'm just trying to finish something as opposed to listening. So being present or listening would be my 3 R's.
Okay. Okay. Yourself? Okay.
You want it to be something
connected to what we've talked about tonight.
Well, as a thought, I do want to make a difference.
Oh, that's right, you did kind of request that, something that had to do with something.
That's okay. While you're thinking, Alan, do you have 3 yards?
Not right now. I'm kind of not following the assignment. Say it again.
Okay, the idea is like in football that we find a short, definable, doable goal that we're going to make a priority to try to make progress on this week.
Right. Okay.
And then we're going to be accountable to each other about how we did next time.
Okay. All right. My wife wants me to help her put up Christmas decorations. So that will be done by next week.
That's great, Alan. That's kind of reaching over into the end of the next chapter, but that's great. I'm just
Okay.
kidding you.
Yeah.
I've been working with somebody for a while in a lot of different areas of their life. And somehow I need to ensure that person that they do have dominion over things, that they're not the whipping posts. There's the times he believes that just everything's against him.
Okay. Sounds good. Your card's out in your truck, but you can hang on to that thought and then put that down. Can you guys hang on to your thought and write it down somehow? Okay. All righty,
That
Peachy.
means they're planning on coming back next time.
Huh?
That means they're planning on coming back next time.
Well, I'm going to be in Branson. We're going to have our 47th anniversary next week.
Congratulations.
And Kamala's birthday. I'm not going to say which one.
The one that's in celebration of the one she had last year.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Well, one last thought, you forgive me for being devil's advocate there. But when you stand up and you're making a toast and people ask you, please don't say, we've been happily married for 27 years.
I'm sorry, I did.
I say, when you stand up and you're making a toast, to your wife and the years that you've been together, please don't stand up and tell everybody, we've been happily married for 47 years. Because that's just not true. You might be happy at the time, and I'm sure there have been hard times of happiness, but no relationship the last 47 days is always happy. And certainly not 47 years, right? People just boggle my mind. We've been happily married for 35 years. Yeah, right. You may be happy now.
Well, you'll notice I did not put it that way.
You did not, I noticed that.
My story has a lot of unfortunate parts. And as we go along, I'll be sharing that. Alrighty, let's close in prayer. Who would like to do that?
I bet Don knows how
They got a lot of work.
see it in your eyes.
We thank you for this opportunity to come together in your presence, Father, as each opportunity. We thank you for all of that. We thank you for what our eyes have seen, our ears have heard, our hearts have felt, the seeds that you planted within us through this gathering, Father. We thank you now for what we generated from this, and we pray and desire, dear God, that it pleases you and honors you each and every time that we touch these things. We will remember, Father, to give you all the praise and glory. Bless each man, each household that's represented here. Those who are here, those who are not. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Praise the Lord.
Okay, night, Alan.
Recording.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I will do the thing next week if you want me to.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Just like the good old
See ya.
days of stacking chairs, remember? This is your hat.